Well, good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, depending on which coast you're joining us from. Welcome to the CoTec Holdings Corp Investor Update webinar. My name is Simon Wilcox. I'm the SVP and Head of Natural Resources Alliance Advisors. I'll be moderator for today. A friendly reminder that today's webinar is being recorded and will be made available on CoTec's website and YouTube channel afterwards. Before we begin, I'd like to note that certain statements made today during the presentation may constitute forward-looking information. These statements are based on current expectations and assumptions and are subject to risks and uncertainties that could cause actual results to differ materially. Please refer to CoTec's public filings for more information. I'm joined on today's webinar by Julian Traeger, President and CEO at CoTec, and Eugene Herken, VP of Finance. Julian's going to provide everyone with an update, operations update today, and following that, we'll open up the webinar to a moderated Q&A session. If you have a question, please feel free to submit by the Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom screen here. With that, very happy to this morning introduce Mr. Julian Traeger to start things off. Julian, good morning.
Good morning, good afternoon. Thank you, Simon, and thank you all who are taking the time to listen to the update on CoTec. I'm going to assume for the purposes of this call that you understand our strategy and what we're seeking to achieve. And we have been very hard at work on your behalf towards the end of last year and then at the beginning of this year. So there have been quite a flurry of announcements. And I thought it was now opportune to try and pull these all together and explain what that means in terms of our progress. But more importantly, the implications for value. And I'll try and pull all of that together at the end of the presentation for you. Most of the announcements have concerned our rare earth magnet recycling business, Hypermag. The first one that came out towards the end of last year provided revised economics based upon the way in which magnet and rare earth prices were moving, as well as increased efficiency at the first hub in Texas. We also updated slightly, well, we updated fully, but it was a small move, the CapEx estimates for the first hub in Texas. But that showed a significant increase in the net present value of the first hub. It jumped up from around $600 million to around $800 million, which was very good news for us, given that the CapEx didn't move, above $150 million. So that was an important milestone. We also updated the market on our progress with regards to starting the first hub in Texas. And I'm happy to say, we're around 40% there in terms of the detailed planning. And we continue to be on track for starting the production of the magnets in the middle of 2027. That announcement was then followed up early this year, I think like last week, with progress on the studies for the second and third hubs. Those will be in Nevada and South Carolina, and they will be largely copycats of the Texas hub. But because they're going to be coming into production later, the net present value of all three hubs is around $2.2 billion US. And then by my calculations, when you deduct the costs of financing, that really spits out a number of roughly 1.1 billion Canadian dollars for CoTec's share of those first three hubs. We are longer term planning to increase the number of hubs to 7 to 10 in the US. And if that is successful in terms of implementation, that would imply a several billion-dollar valuation for CoTec's share after deducting the costs of the financing of those hubs. The other important news item on the hypermag front occurred yesterday when we were very excited to see the opening of our facility in the United Kingdom that was opened by the Minister of Industry. We as CoTec own 20%, as you may know, of the world outside the US through our Magneto investment. And, that's a very significant step for us because it allows us to have a working scaled plant with one HPMS centrifuge producing magnets and can be a very powerful, therefore, demonstration for what we're going to be achieving in the US. The Texas plant will be 3 times the size of that, but it's modular. We have ordered 3 HPMS reactors for that, but there's no real risk in scale up. So it's extremely valuable to have this working model of what we're planning to do in the US and in terms of demonstrating the success of the model, the technology to potential US investors and bankers. This is invaluable, as will be the opening of the German facility, which we expect to happen by the middle of this year. So, we're not talking about a science experiment here. This is something which is operating in real time, and we would expect, Magneto to have revenues during the course of this year from the sale of the magnets that they are producing, which we will obviously have a share of. We're also hard at work in assembling the necessary feedstock for the American operations. We've started stockpiling materials, and we are expanding our joint venture with ILS, as well as expecting a number of other arrangements with suppliers of feedstock to come on board in the next quarter. And then finally, and to my mind, perhaps the most significant of all these announcements was something we said late last year, which is together with our partners, Macango, we have determined that we're going to explore the strategic option of listing this business in the US, if not towards the end of this year, then early next year, at a time when the 2 models in Europe are well scaled and operating, and we're well advanced on the development of the Texas side as well as the other 2 sites. So that's potentially very significant. When I'm often pitched financing opportunities for pre-IPO financings, generally people offer them, to me at a 20 to 30% discount to the IPO price, which they obviously determine is what investors would like to see for taking a sort of 1-year risk. In this case, the whole market cap of CoTec is $200 million. And as I said, I think that the valuation kicked out by the studies for the first 3 hubs is 1.1 billion Canadian dollars. So rather than having only roughly, I don't know, a 40% upside, 50% upside, 40% actually, which is conventional. Here you have something which is more like, a 400% upside, just on this part of our business. And I was actually quite sort of puzzled that there wasn't more of a market reaction to that announcement, which I think was very significant. But that wasn't all that we have accomplished recently. We announced also yesterday, finally, it took much longer than we had hoped, but we got there in the end, the feasibility study and the 43-101 study for our MagIron investment. This, we believe, has the one of the biggest, if not the biggest, iron ore deposit in the US. We have 180 million tons of tailings. We have a pelletizer and a concentrator with replacement value of over $1 billion. And it's all permitted at the concentrator. We have water, electricity, and logistics via the rail. And I'm pleased to say that showed a base case valuation of 1.6 billion US dollars, which our 17% share of translates, by my calculations, to roughly a $300 million Canadian dollar stake post-financing. And next steps there are, corroborating our assumptions with potential customers and clients, and then looking to raise the necessary financing to get that restarted, which we will be doing at the mag iron level. So we don't expect a big drag on CoTec's resources to get that off the ground. We also have been working very hard at Lac-Chenin. We've drilled the second half of the deposit. And we will be making announcements in the coming weeks, and certainly, I think, conclusively by the end of this quarter, or perhaps it will be April, on what that means. But just based even on what we announced last year, that suggests a valuation equally of around $100 million for CoTec's stake in Lac-Chenin on a conservative basis. And we are expecting in the next couple of months to announce our first deals in the other areas where our technologies can make a big difference. So that's copper, and we are hard at work on a number of copper opportunities involving tailings, and then equally with metallic waste. So that would be tungsten, vanadium, titanium, manganese. And those developments will be coming forward in the next quarter or so. So you should look out for that. And then on top of all of that, we do have a bunch of portfolio investments in technologies. We have our tax losses of around $80 million, and we have our 20% stake in Magneto globally. So that includes the UK and the German operations, and probably those altogether are worth another 100 million Canadian dollars. So if you add all of that, you do get to a number of around 1.5 billion Canadian dollars. And we will be in the coming weeks issuing a new presentation for CoTec, which will include an updated sum of the parts. Now, I know that that's very far from the current market cap, but we've generally traded historically, even last year, at roughly a 90% discount to, or 90 to 85% discount for some of the parts. Hopefully, now that we're getting larger, that discount will start to close. There is also, for your information out there, a broker's circular by an independent party, which shows a short-term price target for CoTec stock of $4.50 Canadian. So hopefully that is a helpful exercise for you in trying to explain what all those announcements which came out in late December and the early part of this year mean in terms of the value of your company and your shares. And we're very grateful for your support, and we're very excited about the ongoing journey for CoTec and what we can achieve with our strategy, which is very timely in terms of adopting technology and also by focusing on waste. With that, I will hand over to Simon to help deal with any questions that you may have. Simon.
Wonderful. Thank you, Julian. Very insightful presentation today, and thank you everybody for listening in about these developments. At this point, we'd love to open up the floor to questions. It looks like we've already received some through the Q&A form. As a little reminder, if you have a question, please submit it through the Q&A box, which is probably around down here on the Zoom screen. I'm actually now going to pass over to Eugene Herken, who is the VP of Finance. Eugene is going to guide us through the questions and facilitate answering those. So, Eugene, I'll pass over to you and speak shortly. Thank you.
Thanks, Simon. Okay, so the first question here, Julian, I think you already answered the first part, but I'll read it in full. Hi, Julian. What a truly fantastic year 2025 was for the company. How big do we think 2026 can be for Hypermag USA, Mag Iron, and Lac-Chenin? Second question, Hypermag USA, yesterday there was an event in Birmingham where Siemens gave a top recommendation for our magnets. How pivotal do we think this commissioning will be in future talks and negotiations?
Well, I think Eugene, I did sort of cover the value, and I think during the course of this year, we're going to be, making progress on hardening up what those valuations mean for the company, and we'll see how fast we can expand Hypermag, and then obviously the work we're going to be starting to do on the listing will also be helpful in terms of value discovery. We are expecting, in the case of Mag Iron, in the next couple of months to identify investors, particularly strategics, and there's a lot of interest from global steel companies coming into the US for new projects. And obviously we'll be updating the market on Lac-Chenin. In terms of the commissioning of the Thaisley plant, as I mentioned, I think that's a very, very valuable thing because a lot of the other companies operating in the recycling and rare earth space, are at an earlier stage and somewhat theoretical in terms of what they can achieve. But having a real life example of an operating plant producing the magnets, recycling the e-waste that's magnetic, I think is going to be invaluable for us in terms of scaling our business and giving people confidence that it's the real deal.
Great. Thanks, Julian. We have another comment here. Firstly, a big congratulations to CoTec. The team is small and continues to achieve so much. We have 3 assets and need to get to 20 to 30 by 2030. Can you share some details of the project plan to acquire the assets?
Well, first of all, I mean, to some degree, each hub for Hypermag is an asset. And if we do manage to get to 7 to 10 of those, then we'll be well along the path to the ultimate target we set for ourselves. But Lac-Chenin is a poster child for what can be achieved in the recycling of tailings. And we are engaging with a number of other iron ore companies in Brazil, in the US, and in Canada to try and roll this out, as well as with other potential state in Canada. For the government of Quebec, who pointed us to Lac-Chenin, this would be a great win, and we're working very well with them. At the moment, they have considerable rehabilitation liabilities associated with the site. And at the end of the day, we can reduce their liabilities as well as beautifying the site and producing quite rapidly the scarce critical materials which the Western supply chain needs. So we're hoping to announce a number of other projects during the course of this year. And, we have a great business development pipeline, which we're trying to bring to conclusion.
That's great. Thanks, Julian. Is the company looking at new technologies, specifically in hot sectors like precious metals?
I mean, we would look at in very interesting new technologies. It's unlikely that we will, pivot to precious metals. We've got a lot to do already with the existing 6 technologies that we have, but some of those technologies are applicable to more, precious commodities like gold or silver, particularly our gravity separation technology. So we'll look at those potentially opportunistically, but with iron ore, copper, and metallics and um, uh, magnets, that's already a big opportunity set.
That's great. Actually, that leads into the next question here, Julian. The comment is rallies are occurring in various commodities, metal markets. Can you explain the importance of the metallics division?
Well, the metallics division, as I said, particularly using the gravity separation technology, can create concentration, and um, there is a need for more tungsten, vanadium, titanium, etc., in the Western supply chain. So this is a way in which we can quite rapidly produce the critical materials, particularly in the US, that the government is needing. But I don't want to overplay this. I don't want to really talk much about it. I think we've got to do it, and then we can talk about it.
That makes sense. Another question here, is CoTec required to make a contribution towards the CapEx for the mag iron project in Minnesota in line with its investment percentage holding?
No, I did address that. So the idea at MagIron is to bring in a strategic partner. We are going to be starting having site visits there towards the end of this month, and then in February and March. Lots of global players in the steel industry have indicated a lot of interest in coming to look at it. There will also be potential private equity investors. And the idea is to fund that at the asset level, and to, not make it a big draw on CoTec's uh, financial abilities. The model for CoTec, given that myself and the other directors have a big stake, is to put in place very, very high return early capital and prove up the value of an asset. So in the case of Magine, we bought the asset out of bankruptcy. We have spent, I don't know, probably $50 million so far, testing it, developing it, etc. But now we have a business which has a 1.6 billion post-tax base valuation. That's the sort of thing that CoTec likes to do. But now that we've developed that value, we'd like to bring in outside investors to put up the next bunch of capital, who have a different risk profile to us.
That makes sense. That's great. Julian, thanks. Moving back to Hypermag, we have a question here. Can you comment on the method, excuse me, of a potential IPO? Will it be a SPAC or a traditional IPO? And what would the overall timeline look like?
As I mentioned, we're talking about the end of this year, early next year. We will look at all options at the time, and we'll work out what creates the greatest value for CoTec shareholders and Macango shareholders.
Okay, great. Thanks, Julian. Uh, I'm just looking at this another question here. Mag Iron closed the purchase of the pellet plant in December, as we know. Um, would CoTec consider selling down a portion of their 17% stake if there was an opportunity?
Well, yeah, everything depends upon price and opportunity. Uh, we will have to see how the site visits at Magan go, and if strategic investors want to acquire more than the amount of equity that's on offer, it's quite possible that CoTec could monetize a portion or all of its holding, depending upon the valuation.
Thanks, Julian. I might have missed this when you were speaking because I was just looking through the questions, but What do you consider to be the likely way we'll fund Hypermag USA Texas plant construction? Are you expecting to make an announcement on this front soon?
We will make an announcement before we take the decision to proceed, which will be expected in the next couple of months. So we are busy lining up the necessary debt financing, and then there's also a number of equity investors who we are engaging with. So that will all be sorted out before we move ahead. But the bulk of the financing should happen at the asset level.
Excellent. Thank you, Julian. I think that's pretty much all the questions that we have time for today, Simon. And then we answered most of them here. If there are some more technical questions, please, feel free, or if we didn't get to your question, please feel free to reach out at info@cotec.ca, and we'll get back to you in due course. Simon, just over to you to wrap up.
No, thank you so much, Eugene, and thank you, Julian, for the time today. That concludes today's webinar. Thank you again very much to Julian and Eugene. Thank you for everyone joining us. As Eugene said, if you have any further questions, please do feel free to reach out to Julian and Eugene at info@cotec.ca. That concludes today's webinar. Have a lovely weekend, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye. Thanks, Simon. And thank you all for joining us.